I wouldn't be writing the way I write now if I hadn't read Lewis Carroll. And I wouldn't be writing the way I write now if I hadn't read James Joyce. I read Chekhov when I was probably 18 or 19, and Chekhov made a strong impression on me. I also read Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights, when I was about 15, and that made a strong impression. All writers have mentors who begin when they're children, and they're aware of writing, they're aware of books that they love. Like, is it the Phantom Toll Booth? Some children love that. So they'll say the Phantom Toll Booth, along with Alice in Wonderland, Where the Wild Things Are, and for older children, J.K. Rowling's the Harry Potter novels, they all exist in sort of like a stratosphere that allows the young person to read work that is established and very well done. So when the writer starts to write, he or she is drawing upon some of these mentors. I would say almost dogmatically that you can't be a writer unless you're reading all the time and reading with purpose. Not just reading to waste time or reading something on the internet, but reading crafted work. If you just sit down and read a little novel by Jean Rhys, which is like Wide Sargasso Sea, it's like maybe 120 pages, that novella, that short novel, is so good that when you start writing the next day, you're going to be writing better. You're not going to be imitating her, but you'll be writing better than you would be if you hadn't read her. And so reading is the springboard to writing. What you read and what intensity you read is going to determine probably what you write. Because all human beings are imitative. Primates, we belong to the big primate family, like apes and chimpanzees and monkeys of all kinds. You know, monkey see, monkey do. We are a very imitative species. So when you're a little older, you may want to read classic writing. You may want to read Faulkner, Hemingway, James Joyce, Kafka, Thomas Mann, Virginia Woolf, Henry James. You may want to aim very high, because the more you read and the more you're absorbing, when you start to write, you're going to write on a higher level than you would be if you didn't read these people. And so it's like the old saying, if you want to learn how to play tennis, you play tennis with somebody who's better than you. You don't play tennis with somebody who's not as good as you, because you're never, ever going to learn anything. So reading Ulysses by James Joyce, take a whole summer. Just spend time reading it. And you'll, first of all, it's a great work of art and it's enthralling. It's difficult, but it is truly fascinating. And you'll find that as the weeks go by, your vocabulary will start to improve. Your sense of language will elevate. And when you write, you may sound nothing like James Joyce, nothing, but yet you sound much better than you would have if you hadn't read James Joyce. There are two kinds of readings that are really helpful to young writers. One of them is spontaneous and improvised, where you simply find a book maybe in a library or in a bookstore, and you can even be drawn by the cover and just start reading it and be plunged into a world you didn't anticipate. You might really love that book. It might change your life, or it might not be too important. Then the other kind of reading is systematic. You decide very clearly that you're going to read all of the young Hemingway short stories, because it's mostly his short stories, I think, that are helpful to writers rather than the novels. Hemingway's novels are good novels, but it's the short stories that he was really a master at. So you just say to yourself, I'm going to read 25 short stories by Ernest Hemingway. And I'm going to read them more than once and learn from them. So that kind of reading is what you may get in a university course or community college or your own, you know, maybe it could be a course online or whatever. It's systematic. But the other kind of reading is just spontaneous. And I've had so many extraordinary experiences with just improvised reading. In fact, one day I was just looking at a book, maybe in a library. I'm not even sure that it was a book that I picked up. I mean, it was basically on a library table, I think. I was looking at a history of America, maybe popular culture, and I turned a page, and there was a picture of a girl about 16, and she had brown hair and a very pretty face, though not glamorous. And I wondered, like, who's that? She looks like my mother. Or she looked like girls I went to school with. So I think it was Norma Jean Baker, the woman who would become Marilyn Monroe. And I was just astonished at this snapshot of this girl, because she looked nothing like Marilyn Monroe. She didn't have that blonde hair, and she wasn't radiantly beautiful. She was just pretty. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll read about her. So it was just totally an accident. So then eventually I wrote a 1,400-page novel, really based on just the accident of seeing that snapshot, which is amazing, because I might not have gone into the library that day. I might have done something else. I might have decided I didn't want to look at that book. So it was really an accident. So I think along with the systematic and purposeful reading, you have to have a lot of accidents. Obviously, the reading is the first experience, and if impressionistically it made a really strong impression on you, you want to reread it. So then you notice the second time through how it's based, how it's structured. A writer is seeing how it's put together. So I always notice, like, what's the title? What's the first paragraph, the first sentences? Is the first chapter very short? Is it long? Is it divided into sections? To me, all those formal qualities of the work are very interesting. But I wouldn't expect, when my mother was reading my work, I wouldn't expect my mother or my father to have any interest at all or to be aware of any of that. Like, my mother wouldn't say to me, "Oh, Joyce, I love the structure of your novel." And when I was on the Oprah show some years ago for my novel, we were the Mulvaneys, there were a number of women on the Oprah show with me, and all of them talked about my novel to me, but not one of them talked about the formal qualities. They only talked about the characters. In other words, most readers are reading for character, and then they're reading for a plot. But the writer has to present that in the most coherent way possible, in the most effective way. So it's like you're making a film. People look at a movie, they sit back in the seat, and they see this movie, and they really enjoy it, and they love it. They have not 1/1,000,000th idea of all the work that goes into it. They don't know how the movie had pre-production, how there was research, how years went by. They don't know how many people worked on it, who the script writers were. They don't even know who the director is. I mean, most people have no interest in the formal qualities. But if you're in that world, the formal qualities are really the only ones that matter. Like, how did James Joyce put Ulysses together, to me, is very interesting. Whereas to a reader, maybe not so much. So if you're going to be a writer, it's like, if you're going to be a cabinet builder, you have to look at a cabinet. And you have to go to the cabinet maker and say, how did you make this wonderful cabinet? Because I can't see it with my eyes. I'll have to somehow learn about it. The formal qualities of a work are most obvious when one spends time maybe discussing them with other people. I think learning by yourself is not so effective. Most of my learning about Hemingway, Faulkner, and James Joyce, I did alone. I didn't really have a structure. But I think if you could take a college course, take a course in writing, a writing workshop, where with other people sitting around a table, you're actually thinking and talking about Hemingway. It could be Jodi Picoult, who is a wonderful contemporary writer, a popular best-selling writer. We'll have people like a book club. So you have people sharing something that they read, and somebody says, well, I really like this passage. Somebody else said, you know, I don't like this character, and then discuss it. Or what don't you like about that character? Or I really like the ending of the novel. And somebody else says, I didn't like the ending. And to sort of discuss it in that formal way rather than saying I liked it or didn't like it is too simple. But like, why? What did you like about it? those are things that you learn by, reading it more than once. But I think the best way to enjoy literature is with other people.